The massive survey fleet of the Stellar Coalition dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Their sleek ships, each one looking like polished silver against the black of space, moved in perfect formation. At the front of the fleet, Admiral Gray stood on the bridge of the flagship Star Seeker, his tall frame casting a shadow on the glowing display before him. "Another primitive world," he said, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who had seen this scene play out hundreds of times before. The blue-green planet on the main screen looked unremarkable, just like the countless others they had discovered and guided into their grand coalition. The ship's computer displayed its initial findings. Planet Earth. Dominant species. Human. Technology level. Early space age. Notable achievements. Limited lunar exploration. Primitive satellite network. Basic computer systems. Admiral Gray nodded to himself. It was always the same. Young races taking their first steps into space, thinking they were alone in the universe. The Coalition would guide them, just as they had guided so many others before. "Sir," called out one of the sensor operators, "we're detecting their primitive defense systems tracking us. Should we activate our shields?" The Admiral almost laughed. "No need. Their weapons are so basic they couldn't even scratch our hull paint." He turned to his communications officer. "Send the standard first contact package. Let's see how they react." Down on Earth, in the UN Security Council chamber, emergency alarms were blaring. Military leaders from around the world sat around the large circular table, their faces lit by the glow of screens showing the alien fleet. "They're broadcasting something," announced General Walker, his weathered face calm despite the situation. It's a greeting message, in every language on Earth." The message played through the chamber speakers. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Stellar Coalition, a peaceful alliance of advanced civilizations. We come to welcome you into the greater galactic community and guide your development." The room fell silent. Then someone laughed. A quiet, knowing chuckle. It was Dr. Smith, the archaeologist who had been called in as a consultant. She sat at the far end of the table, looking remarkably relaxed for someone in the middle of humanity's first alien contact. "How interesting," she said, drawing curious looks from the others. "They think we're the young ones." General Walker raised an eyebrow. "Should we activate the defense grid?" Dr. Smith shook her head. "No, let's play along for now. It's been a long time since we've had visitors who didn't know our true nature. This could be educational." Back on the Star Seeker, Admiral Gray watched with satisfaction as the humans responded with their own message. Clumsy but eager, just as he expected from a young race. His crew began preparing the standard protocols for integrating a new species into the Coalition. "Begin surface scans," he ordered. "Let's see what we're working with." The scan started, and at first, everything seemed normal. Then one of the junior officers frowned at his display. "Sir, there's something odd about these readings." "Odd how?" The Admiral moved to look at the screen. "Well, sir, when we scan deep into their planet's crust, there are patterns. They look almost artificial, but that's impossible. They'd have to be millions of years old." Admiral Gray dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. "Natural formations, nothing more. Focus on the current civilization." As the Coalition fleet settled into orbit, preparing to make official first contact, Dr. Smith sat in her office deep beneath the UN building. She opened an ancient terminal that looked like it was made of simple metal and plastic. But when her fingers touched the surface, lines of light spread from the contact points, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing the positions of every Coalition ship. She typed a quick message. "The children have come home. Maintain camouflage protocols for now. Let's see what they've learned out there among the stars." The message disappeared into quantum channels that the Coalition's best sensors would register as simple background radiation. All around the world, hidden systems acknowledged her command, and humanity prepared to play the role they had perfected over millions of years, that of an innocent young species taking its first steps into space. Little did their visitors know that those first steps had been taken when their own ancestors were still swimming in primordial seas. The Coalition's dig teams landed 3 days after first contact, setting up their equipment near what humans called the Mariana Trench. Their machines looked like giant silver spiders, crawling across the ocean floor with scanning beams that cut through rock like light through glass. Dr. Smith watched them from the observation deck of a nearby research vessel. To the Coalition scientists, it appeared to be a normal oceanographic ship. They couldn't see the quantum sensors hidden beneath its rusty exterior, analyzing their every move. "They're getting close to Site 7, she said into what looked like an old phone. "Should we discourage them?" The voice that replied was calm. "No, let them dig. It's time they learned." On the ocean floor, the Coalition's lead scientist, Dr. Reed, was getting frustrated. His silver skin reflected the deep sea lights as he moved from one scanning station to another. "These readings make no sense," he said to his team. "The patterns we're seeing, they're too ordered to be natural, too old to be human." One of his assistants pointed at a new reading. "Look at this energy signature. It's similar to our quantum storage systems, but the complexity is off the charts." Dr. Reed shook his head. "Impossible. The humans only achieved basic computing a few decades ago. They can barely reach their own moon." Above them, on the bridge of the Star Seeker, Admiral Gray was reviewing their findings. The more they scanned Earth, the more anomalies they found. Strange energy patterns deep in the crust, perfectly geometric formations that shouldn't exist, and radiation signatures that didn't match any known natural phenomenon. "Sir," a young officer called out, "we're detecting similar patterns on their moon." The Admiral turned sharply. "The moon? They've only been there a few times with their primitive rockets." Down on the ocean floor, Dr. Reed's team had finally reached their target depth. Their machines cut through the last layer of rock, and suddenly all their instruments went crazy. The water around them began to glow with a soft blue light. "Everyone, step back," Dr. Reed ordered, but it was too late. The seafloor beneath their equipment started to shift, revealing what looked like a massive metal door made of some black material that absorbed all light. On the surface, Dr. Smith smiled. She turned to General Walker, who had just arrived on the ship. "They found it. Should we let them in?" The general checked his watch. An ancient device that looked like cheap plastic but could control technology beyond the Coalition's understanding. "Not yet. Let them try to figure it out first." Dr. Reed and his team spent hours trying to understand what they had found. Their best scanning equipment couldn't identify the material of the door. Their most advanced AI couldn't decode the symbols etched into its surface. It was like trying to read a book written in a language that existed before language itself. "This has to be from another civilization," Dr. Reed insisted. "Maybe visitors who came to Earth long ago." One of his human assistants, a young scientist named Tom, spoke up. "Or maybe," he said quietly, "it's ours." Dr. Reed laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. Your people only started building computers in the last century. This technology, it's millions of years old." Tom just smiled and went back to his work. In orbit, Admiral Gray was facing a decision. The discovery was too significant to ignore, but too strange to explain. According to all their data, humans were a young species, still growing, still learning, but everything they found on Earth seemed to tell a different story. "Sir," his second-in-command suggested, "maybe we should ask the humans about these findings." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Send a message to their leaders, but be diplomatic. We don't want to frighten them with questions about technology they couldn't possibly understand." As the message was sent, Dr. Smith stood in her true office, hidden a mile beneath the primitive UN building. The walls were made of the same black material the Coalition had found in the ocean. Holographic displays showed the locations of thousands of similar sites around the solar system, all waiting to be awakened. "They're finally asking questions," she said to the empty room. "Now, Let's see if they're ready for the answers. The Coalition's best code breakers had been working for a week straight, trying to understand the strange patterns they'd found in Earth's crust. They sat in their ship's main research lab, surrounded by floating holographic displays, showing what they thought were natural crystal formations. "These can't be natural," one of the code breakers said, rubbing his tired eyes. "The patterns repeat too perfectly. It's like they're storing data." In the corner of the lab, Tom watched them work. The Coalition scientists had kept him around as a primitive human observer, thinking they were teaching him about advanced science. Little did they know, he was sending regular reports to Dr. Smith about their progress. Dr. Reed burst into the lab, his silver skin almost glowing with excitement. "We found more. The moon's core is full of these crystals. They form a network, but we can't figure out what it does." Admiral Gray called an emergency meeting on the Star Seeker's command deck. Representatives from the Coalition's most advanced races gathered around a table that projected a 3D map of the solar system. Red dots showed where they'd found the crystal networks: Earth, the Moon, Mars, and even some asteroids. "This changes everything," the Admiral said. "These formations, they're too widespread to be natural, too complex to be random. Someone built this system, and I want to know who." On Earth, deep beneath the old UN building, Dr. Smith sat in her real office, watching the Coalition's confusion with amusement. The walls around her were made of the same crystals the aliens were studying. She pressed her hand against one, and it lit up with a soft blue glow. "They're getting closer," she said to General Walker, who stood nearby. "They've almost figured out they're looking at data storage systems." The general nodded. "And when they try to read them, they'll only see what we want them to see." For now, back in the Coalition lab, a breakthrough was coming. One of their youngest scientists had noticed something strange. The crystals responded to certain types of quantum vibrations. When they exposed the samples to these vibrations, patterns emerged. "It's code," she shouted, drawing everyone's attention. "But it's not like anything we've seen before. It's more advanced than our quantum computers." Dr. Reed rushed to her station, his eyes wide. "That's impossible. How could these ancient formations be more advanced than our technology? We're the most advanced civilization in known space." Tom couldn't help but smile. "Are you sure about that?" he asked quietly. Before anyone could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The crystals they were studying had begun to glow, pulsing with a bright blue light. Similar reports came in from every Coalition ship. All their samples had activated at once. On Earth, Dr. Smith received the alert she'd been waiting for. The Coalition had finally hit the right frequency. She walked to the center of her office and spoke clearly. "Begin protocol awakening." The response was immediate. Every crystal network in the solar system lit up at once. In the Coalition lab, the holographic displays exploded with information. Not random data, but clearly organized streams of knowledge. The scientists watched in shock as their translation software began to decipher it. This is impossible," Dr. Reed whispered. "These are technological blueprints, scientific theories, but they're centuries ahead of our best work." Admiral Gray's voice came over the ship's speakers, sounding shaken. "All personnel, be advised. We're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the solar system. Something is happening." Tom stood up calmly. "Don't worry," he said to the panicking scientists. "It's just time for you to learn the truth." Dr. Smith's voice echoed through every Coalition ship, transmitted through the very crystals they had been studying. "Welcome, children of the stars. You've done well to make it this far. But now it's time for you to meet your elders. We've been waiting a very long time for this moment." The Coalition members watched in stunned silence as their screens filled with information. The true history of humanity, stored in crystal networks they had buried millions of years ago, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. The moon changed first. Its surface began to ripple like water, as billions of tiny machines hidden beneath the gray dust awakened from their million-year sleep. The Coalition fleet watched in shock as massive structures emerged from the lunar surface, their black metal surfaces absorbing starlight. Full defensive positions. Admiral Gray shouted, but even as he gave the order, he knew their weapons would be useless against technology so advanced it could reshape a moon. Dr. Smith's voice came through their communication system again, calm and reassuring. "There's no need for weapons, Admiral. If we wanted to harm you, we could have done so the moment you entered our solar system." On the moon's surface, huge doors opened in the newly revealed structures. Inside, shipyards larger than cities hummed to life. Ancient vessels, their designs unlike anything the Coalition had ever seen, rose from their long rest. Tom stood in the Coalition lab, watching the scientists' faces as they saw humanity's true power revealed. "We had to be sure," he said softly. "We had to know if you were ready." Dr. Reed turned to him, his silver skin pale with shock. "Ready for what?" "Ready to learn. Ready to understand why we hid all this." On Earth, similar transformations were taking place. The oceans churned as hidden facilities activated. The Mariana Trench revealed itself to be an artificial construction, a doorway to vast underground complexes that had been waiting dormant for millions of years. In orbit, Admiral Gray received urgent messages from his fleet. Every scan they took showed more hidden technology awakening. Defensive platforms emerged from asteroids. Massive energy signatures appeared where empty space had been moments before, as ancient cloaking systems deactivated. "Impossible," he whispered. "Your people, you were supposed to be primitive. We watched your news broadcasts, your wars, your struggles with basic spaceflight." Dr. Smith appeared on his bridge in person, stepping out of what looked like a ripple in the air. The Coalition crew jumped back, their weapons raised. She looked exactly as she had before, but now they could see the subtle shimmer of advanced technology in her clothes, in her skin. "We learned our lesson long ago," she said. "In what we call the First Age, we were like you. We expanded too quickly, built too eagerly, fought too readily. We nearly destroyed ourselves and countless others." The Admiral watched as more ships emerged from the moon's shipyards. They made his fleet look like children's toys. "So you hid, pretended to be primitive. But why? To grow wisely this time. To ensure we wouldn't repeat our mistakes. And to watch over the younger races as they emerged, making sure they didn't destroy themselves as we nearly did." In the lab, Tom showed the scientists something that made them gasp. A simple wooden pencil that transformed into a device more advanced than anything they had ever seen. Everything you saw, every primitive tool, every struggling spacecraft, was carefully crafted to maintain the illusion. Dr. Reed sat heavily in his chair. "All our studies of Earth, everything we thought we knew, was exactly what we wanted you to see," Tom finished. "We needed to know if you would come in peace, if you would try to help what you thought was a younger species. You passed that test." Throughout the solar system, more of humanity's true nature revealed itself. The asteroid belt showed itself to be an intricately designed defense network. Mars shed its red surface, revealing vast terraforming machines that had been disguised as natural formations. On the Star Seeker's bridge, Dr. Smith gestured to the display showing all the awakening technology. "This is only the beginning. There's so much more we've hidden among the stars, waiting for the right time. And now, Admiral Gray, we have a question for the Coalition." The Admiral stood straighter, trying to maintain his dignity in the face of such overwhelming revelation. "What question?" Dr. Smith smiled kindly. "Now that you know what we are, now that you've seen our true nature, would you like to learn from us? Not as teachers, as you first intended, but as students." The silence that followed was filled with the sound of more ancient machines awakening, as humanity's long masquerade finally came to an end. The Coalition Council called an emergency meeting 3 days after humanity's revelation. Representatives from 100 alien races gathered in their grand meeting hall, their ships parked nervously beside the now revealed human defense platforms. Admiral Gray stood before them, giving his report. His voice shook slightly as he described what they had found. Behind him, the room's displays showed images of human technology that most of the council members could barely understand. "The humans," he said, "are not what we thought. Their civilization didn't begin a few thousand years ago. It began millions of years before our oldest records. They were traveling between stars when our ancestors were still learning to make fire." Dr. Smith and Tom sat quietly in the back of the hall, watching the council's reactions. Some showed fear, others anger, but most simply looked lost. Everything they had believed about their place in the galaxy had just been turned upside down. A council member stood up, his scaled skin reflecting the light. "But we found no signs of human civilization in any of our territories. We've explored thousands of worlds." Tom touched a simple metal bracelet on his wrist. Suddenly, the room's displays changed, showing familiar star systems. As they watched, hidden structures began to appear on planets they thought they knew well. Ancient human outposts, monitoring stations, and research facilities shed their camouflage. "You found no signs," Dr. Smith said gently, "because we didn't want you to find them. Yet you've been using our old technologies without knowing it. You're faster than light drives. Based on principles we discovered ages ago. Your quantum communications, a simplified version of systems we built before your planets cooled." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Another member, her crystalline form glittering, asked the question they all feared. "Are you going to take control now? Claim your place as rulers of the galaxy?" Dr. Smith walked to the center of the room, her steps echoing in the sudden silence. "No, that was the mistake we made in the first age. We tried to control everything, to shape the galaxy according to our will. It nearly destroyed us, and many others." She waved her hand, and the displays showed new images, ancient battles, destroyed worlds, the catastrophic aftermath of wars fought with technologies that could tear reality apart. "We learned from that mistake," Tom added. "We went back to basics, started over, built our civilization again, but slowly, carefully, with wisdom instead of pride." Admiral Gray stepped forward. "But why reveal yourselves now? Why not stay hidden?" Dr. Smith smiled. "Because you're reaching a critical point. Many civilizations in the Coalition are discovering technologies that could either elevate them to new heights or lead them down the same destructive path we once walked. You need to understand the choices ahead of you." The displays changed again, showing peaceful human cities that seamlessly blended incredible technology with natural environments. Ships that could cross galaxies rested beside simple gardens. Children played with toys that could reshape matter while their parents tended to ordinary plants. "We're not here to rule," Dr. Smith continued. "We're here to guide, to help you avoid the mistakes we made, to show you that having power isn't as important as knowing when not to use it." Tom held up his hand, and a small hologram appeared above it, a simple DNA strand that transformed into increasingly complex patterns. "Every piece of technology you've seen today, every advancement we've made, taught us one thing. True progress isn't about building bigger ships or more powerful weapons. It's about growing wiser." The council members watched in silence as more of humanity's hidden achievements revealed themselves across known space. Stations that had maintained the balance of entire ecosystems for millions of years. Libraries containing the combined knowledge of civilizations long since turned to dust. "The choice is yours," Dr. Smith said to the quiet room. "We can show you what we've learned, help you understand the true mysteries of the universe, or we can return to our quiet watch, letting you find your own way. But know this, we reveal ourselves now not to claim power, but to offer wisdom. The question is, are you ready to learn?" The council chamber remained silent as the representatives of 100 younger races faced the humbling truth. They weren't the advanced civilization they had thought they were. They were students who had just met their teachers. The balance of power in the galaxy shifted dramatically over the next few weeks, not through war or conquest, but through understanding. As humanity's hidden installations awakened across thousands of worlds, The coalition discovered just how deeply human influence had shaped their development. In a quiet garden on Earth, Admiral Gray sat with Dr. Smith, watching real butterflies dance around artificial flowers that could power entire cities. He held a cup of what looked like ordinary tea, but the liquid inside could heal any disease. "I still don't understand," he said, watching a butterfly land on his finger. "Your people could have ruled the galaxy. Instead, you chose to live in hiding, using primitive tools, riding chemical rockets into space." Dr. Smith touched a nearby flower, and it transformed into a holographic display showing different alien civilizations. "Tell me, Admiral, what happens to children if you give them everything they want? If you solve all their problems for them?" Before he could answer, Tom walked into the garden through what seemed like thin air, followed by Dr. Reed. The coalition scientist had spent days studying human technology, and each discovery left him more amazed than the last. "The quantum crystals we found," Dr. Reed said excitedly. "They're not just data storage. They're part of a galaxy-wide network. You've been monitoring every developing civilization, haven't you?" "Monitoring, and sometimes helping in small ways," Tom replied. "A saved planet here, a prevented war there. But always in secret, always letting younger races find their own path." Above them, the sky shimmed as another layer of Earth's defenses revealed itself. The coalition fleet now looked impossibly small next to the ancient human ships that had emerged from their hiding places throughout the solar system. "You're faster than light technology," Dr. Reed continued. "It's just a tiny fraction of what you can really do, isn't it? The principles we're so proud of understanding. They're like children learning to count while their parents do calculus." Dr. Smith nodded. "We learned that giving advanced technology to unprepared civilizations is like giving a baby a loaded gun. In our first age, we uplifted many species too quickly. The results were tragic." She waved her hand, and the garden around them transformed. They stood in a perfect recreation of an ancient battlefield. Worlds burned as ships wielding unimaginable powers clashed in space. Entire civilizations winked out of existence in moments. "This was our mistake," she said softly. "We thought power meant progress. We didn't understand that wisdom must come first." The scene changed back to the peaceful garden. Admiral Gray looked at his teacup with new understanding. "So you hid your true nature, lived among the stars in secret, and watched us grow on our own." "Yes," Tom said. "We built this facade of a young, struggling civilization. We launched simple rockets while our real ships danced between dimensions. We made a show of basic computers while our quantum networks spanned galaxies." Dr. Reed looked around the garden with fresh eyes, realizing that every plant, every insect, might be more than it appeared. "But now you're revealing everything. Why?" "Because the coalition is reaching a turning point," Dr. Smith explained. "Many of your worlds are discovering technologies that could either enlighten or destroy them. You're following the same path we once walked." She stood and walked to a simple wooden bench. At her touch, it transformed into a window looking out into deep space, showing thousands of galaxies. "We can't stop you from making your own choices, but we can offer our experience, our wisdom, to help you avoid our mistakes." Admiral Gray watched as more coalition ships arrived in Earth's orbit, drawn by the news of humanity's revelation. "And if we choose not to listen, then we'll return to our watch," Tom said simply. "We won't interfere, but we hope you'll choose a better path. After all, true power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself." As if to emphasize his point, the garden flickered, briefly showing its true nature, a technological marvel beyond imagination, before returning to its simple, peaceful appearance. The message was clear. Humanity's greatest achievement wasn't their advanced technology, but their wisdom to know when not to use it. 1 month after humanity's revelation, Admiral Gray stood with Dr. Smith in a vast chamber beneath the Mariana Trench. The walls shimmered with living metal that responded to their thoughts, showing scenes from across the galaxy. Coalition ships moved through space alongside revealed human vessels, learning, adapting, growing. Your council has made its decision, Dr. Smith asked, though she likely already knew the answer. The Chamber's quantum networks could probably tell her every word spoken in every coalition meeting. Yes, the Admiral replied, watching a group of his scientists working with Tom to understand a simple-looking human device that could reshape reality itself. We want to learn, not just about the technology, but about why you chose this path. Dr. Smith touched the wall, and the scene changed to show Earth as it had appeared millions of years ago. This was us during the First Age, she said. We thought we were so wise, so advanced. We spread across the stars, uplifting civilizations, giving them technology they weren't ready for. The images showed magnificent cities rising on countless worlds, then burning as those same civilizations turned their gifts against each other and themselves. We learned the hard way that progress isn't measured in technological advancement alone. Above them, through miles of ocean and air, the Coalition fleet orbited Earth alongside human ships that had remained hidden for millions of years. But now the human vessels didn't look threatening. Instead, they appeared more like guardians watching over younger siblings. Some of our people are afraid, Admiral Gray admitted. They think you'll take control, make us dependent on your technology. Others want you to solve all our problems immediately. Dr. Smith smiled and held up what looked like an ordinary stone. It glowed softly, then projected a map of the galaxy. Countless points of light showed where human installations had washed and waited through the ages. We won't do either, she said. You'll keep your independence, your ships, your technology, your way of life. We'll guide when asked, advise when needed, but your path must be your own. The chamber shifted, carrying them to what appeared to be a simple meeting room. Through the windows, they could see Earth's moon, its surface now alive with revealed human technology that had slumbered for eons. Tom entered, carrying an old book, but when he opened it, the pages came alive with moving images and living text. We've prepared the first lessons, he said. Basic principles that will help the Coalition understand not just how our technology works, but why we use it the way we do. And you'll teach us everything? The Admiral asked. No, Dr. Smith replied gently. We'll teach you how to learn, how to grow, how to advance without losing yourselves. The rest will come with time. She waved her hand, and the room filled with holograms showing Coalition worlds. On each planet, hidden human installations were helping in subtle ways, preventing natural disasters, stabilizing atmospheres, guiding evolution itself. We've always been there, Tom explained, watching, helping quietly, waiting for the right moment. Not because we wanted to control you, but because we remembered how hard our own path had been. Admiral Gray watched as a Coalition ship docked with one of the revealed human stations near Mars. And now, what happens to the galaxy now that everyone knows the truth? Now, Dr. Smith said, we do what we've always done. We watch, we guide, we teach. But this time, we do it openly, as friends rather than hidden guardians. The chamber's walls shifted one final time, showing the vast expanse of space. Countless galaxies spun in the void, and in many of them, more human installations waited to be revealed. Your people called us primitive, she continued, but that taught us humility. You thought us young, and that taught us patience. You came to teach us, and in doing so, proved you were ready to learn. Tom closed his book, and it transformed into a small device that floated in the air between them. This isn't an ending, he said. It's a beginning. The Coalition will keep growing, keep advancing, but now with the wisdom of those who walked this path before. Admiral Gray looked at the device, then at the endless stars beyond. We thought we were the teachers, he said quietly. But we were the students all along. No, Dr. Smith corrected him kindly. You were both, just as we are both teachers and students. That, perhaps, is the greatest lesson we learned in all our millions of years among the stars.